Welcome back to Drone Sound Under, guys. I'm Sunny from Air Inspect, and here with me is Patrick from Air Inspect as well. Um, we have, as you see, our previous two videos on DJI Air 3. Guys, if you have not seen the three videos regarding piloting as well as processing, go ahead and check them out before proceeding to this podcast, because this is more or less a after-action report. Patrick, go ahead and just make a short introduction of yourself.
Yep. Hi, I'm Patrick, Air Inspect. I've been flying drones here for about 2 years and slowly perfecting the art of photogrammetry. One day I'll get it perfect, but not yet. But we thought we'd take this opportunity to investigate whether or not a consumable drone like the Air 3 would be useful in roof inspections. So I did the flying and Sunny weaved his magic with the processing.
Yes, and just for the reference of consumer drones, we also did a free processing in DJI Air 3, in DJI Terra as well.
Terra.
So we'll do a brief cover on that as well. So, so if you are thinking of getting into this kind of magical, so to speak, processing with aerial triangulation, you don't feel gatekept by costly software and such. You can get into it for fairly low cost.
Yeah.
Now, let's start. So understanding what photogrammetry is. Now, Patrick, you're less familiar with photogrammetry than me. So just to gauge the room, so to speak, would you care to explain to me what photogrammetry is?
Yeah. Well, photogrammetry is taking a building, a live building, and duplicating it. So creating an eye twin, if you will. So we need to take photos from different angles, making sure that we have a decent overlap of each photo, so that when Sunny weaves his magic in the data processing, there's enough information there for each photo to be able to be stitched together. And then we're trying to ensure that we can replicate that model, a 2D model, into a 3D model. And that's where you come in, Sunny, with your specialty.
Yes. So in terms of the brief overview of photogrammetry workflow, is when you get the photo data, you import them into the processing software, and you run the aerial triangulation process. There are sometimes problems that will arise, such as some of the pictures are not taken into account. Some pictures are rejected in a process, and you have to bring them in with user input. This is, of course, a lot easier and a lot more complex in more advanced software. But in the more free software, they tend to be more automatic. But where they would have problem is when things start to fail. You don't have that degree of control to rectify those issues. Speaking of processing, the main capturing device that we use is the DJI Air 3. I suppose that one extends to the Air 3S as well and the wider consumer market. Now, Patrick is extremely experienced, far more experienced than me in terms of drone piloting. I have done some capturing, but those are for testing, and I did do it with consumer drones, but those are, DJI flip and so forth. So it's really not up to snuff. It's like a step even further down than the consumer drones when it comes to for DJI Air 3. So,
yeah, I guess the issue here we have with distinguishing between enterprise and the consumer drones is that the Air 3, it's the camera. So what distinguishes whether or not you can capture the data so that you can process it is the quality of the camera. And the DJI Air 3 camera, it's not a mechanical shutter. So there are some issues in processing that can arise if you don't use it properly. And the settings. So the settings, if you saw the first video there, it talked about the settings and how to set the camera, and also with the drone itself, putting it into a automatic shutter. So the DJI Air 3 only has a 5-second timer. Allows you to concentrate on focusing the image in the screen, as opposed to the enterprise drones where a lot of it is automated and the camera is a full frame and very high pixel rate. So as you can see here, Sunny has got pulled up the blue spots there is where we took the photos. And from that, Sunny was able to extrapolate the data and create the model. The enterprise drones will take a better picture and capture more data. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is data and the quality of the data that it captures. So did you have any issues with the R3?
Well, I'm fairly surprised by really the accuracy of Air 3, I would say. I was not expecting any of the pictures to be in alignment at all. I was expecting that I have to do a lot of manual work, so to speak, to input a lot of tie points in order to bring the pictures in. But it was actually extremely smooth. It was actually akin to some of the enterprise workflow where things just goes well every time. So you just click next, next, next. You check on the quality, and then next, which is very surprising because I was expecting something like taking data with the DSLR, but it wasn't like that at all. Everything just brought in. But we can see here that despite the horizontal accuracy, it's definitely not within the 10 centimeter margin of error, but is well within the margin of error for the software to process all the pictures smoothly. But what we can see here is the vertical error. The margin of error for the vertical inaccuracy, so to speak, is quite large. So much so that when we include the oblique data, it comes out relative instead of georeferenced. So this is, well, for context, vertical inaccuracy are even a problem with enterprise drones. Even with enterprise drone, we have to pay very close attention with the vertical tracking, and that's often one of the big things that we need to look at in terms of troubleshooting and QA. So this is, of course, a lot more pronounced in a consumer model, but it is still usable nonetheless. I could totally manually correct each picture. Not realistic in terms of our workflow wise, but it is possible.
Yeah, I guess this really illustrates the difference with RTK. So these two flights were done on 2 separate days, and the dot at the bottom there is the oblique flights I did. And if RTK was available, it wouldn't have that huge discrepancy in vertical height there. And it just makes more of a challenge for something, that's all.
Yes, of course. Anything Patrick does reflects either I'm going to spend more time or spend less time. And I think it really comes down to time. So about time, Patrick, how long did it take you to capture this set of data?
Yeah, as you can see in the video, I think it was the second video there, it was quite a windy day for the Air 3, so it was being tossed around a bit. So it was taking me a little bit more time to keep it on a relatively straight plane and straight line. But I think, the video was, 20 minutes long? That's how long it took me to capture the roof. The oblique flight took a bit more, just because there's a bit more detail and you want to ensure you're covering what you need to cover. But really, this was about, I'd say within an hour, you could have captured all this, which for a consumer drone and the output that's created is pretty good. I mean, you're not going to get the accuracy in terms of survey grade, but if you're just doing a roof inspection for an inspector to look at the photos and the 2D image of the ortho of the roof, the detail there is enough for them to zoom in and make some comments on the roof and whatnot. As you can see there, the roof is a bit dated and a bit old and a bit dirty.
Well, speaking of the detail, Patrick, can you highlight kind of just how big of a difference really having oblique data on top of the nadir data, like how big of a difference does that make? Of course, on the processing end, we can see visually that it adds a lot more detail to the reality model. But in terms of for roof inspection, for example, like how is it a critical technique to use?
Not for just a straight down nadir shot roof inspection, unless there's damage or something that's underneath one of the overhangs there. You can see there's about 3 of them there. So I guess if you want to really give the inspector a really good view of what's there, you're best to do, especially like a roof like this, where if it's a flat roof, you know, you don't need to do it. But with a roof like this, you'd probably be a good idea to do an oblique angle flight to capture things that are underneath the awning, like in the left-hand side there, you can see the roof meeting the windows there. It kind of starts to marshmallow, whereas on the right-hand side, it's a lot better. Obviously, it could be better if I did some more angles, but in terms of a roof inspector looking at that, is probably better than on the right side than on the left side. So it definitely adds more detail, and the more detail, the better, really.
Yes, we can really see that. For example, if there's damage, so to speak, in the gutter, drainage pipe,
Exactly.
the nadir only model would not be able to pick that up, and you'll have to go into the picture to even spot these kind of issues. So it really affects just the it really affects the visual fidelity does affects the effectiveness of doing an inspection off of these datas. Speaking of which, Patrick, what other techniques did you cover in the first, in the first and second video?
Yeah.
Can you just kind of rerun us through that?
Yep. So on the second one, we also did a partial wall. So if you can take it to the wall on the left there. So tying in the nadir shot to the wall, that's when we did so every 15-degree change of angle. So we went from a nadir, which is 90 degrees, to a 75 degrees to 60 and 45. And that ties in the roof with the wall and then with the actual floor of the wall as well. So you can see, so these two were both had those shots done, the oblique shots done there. So if you look at this one and then go to the other side, you can see probably a slight difference in terms of, I didn't do obliques on this one here. So if you go look at see on the roof there, you can see how it starts to marshmallow and get a bit out of focus. Yeah, and the right-hand side, that caught, when I was doing the obliques on the roof, that caught some of the wall there, but not the entire wall. So it's not as good as the other wall that I did do the oblique flights on it. So you can really tell a difference in the detail, the brickwork from one wall to the other. So definitely, even with the roof, if you get, that's going to differentiate yourself from just getting at the minimum detail to getting a lot more detail in terms of just doing a zigzag flight over the roof. Even if there's air conditioning units on top there, or satellites, or sunlight, you want to do some orbits around there at an oblique angle to get the best results for someone who's going to investigate and make some claims on the roof.
Yes, and speaking of some of these capture technique, Patrick, if you were to use for example, the 3 Enterprise, how much of in terms of oblique and nadir and the combining of both techniques, how much more is there to it in terms of capturing data?
Yeah, the difference is like the technique is the same. This is the exact same technique we use when we're doing, massive warehouses or buildings or like that. The same technique. It's showing that you can apply the same technique from an enterprise level with using a decent consumer drone. So the Air 3, as someone who's maybe starting out in the industry and trying to find a way in, the Air 3 is fine. It can do an okay job. In terms of maybe the detail you get in running the software to interpret the data, I think that's the next key in terms of what do you use. In terms of the technique between enterprise and consumer drones, sometimes we will walk the drone, especially if it's if the building is next to another building and we can't pull back far enough. We need to try things that to make sure we get the detail we need in terms of even on walls. You have structures that stand out. You want to go do an orbit around the wall. The big HVACs on top of these buildings, we do orbits at an oblique angle. Same thing I did here. So there's no difference in the technique. Obviously, everything's just bigger and more expensive. But for someone starting out, I can't see why an Air 3 is not a good starting point. The new Mavic 4 is out, so if someone wants to use the plenty of Mavic 3s that are on the market now, they've got a decent camera. The Air 3 camera, was it 48 megapixels? No, was it 25 megapixels? I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but it's a decent camera to start with anyway.
Yeah, as you can see, as the platform gain more capability when you move on to enterprise equipment, it opens for a lot more techniques, and you have to consider of a lot more factors. Obviously, the output, the data output would be a lot better, but it also means that you can do a lot more with the drones to really maximize the quality of data captured. And speaking of which, Patrick, when it comes to enterprise work, do you foresee any scenario where you would use a consumer drones?
Just in terms of access, I don't think we'd use. I mean, I've used the Air 3 to do some roof inspections, residential roof inspections, but in terms of enterprise level, probably not. I think the lowest. Not so lowest. The smallest we'd go would be a Mavic 3E. That's what we use quite a bit actually. It comes down to the camera and the data the camera captures. The Air 3 for enterprise work, like I said, would probably be a specialty in terms of getting into something that's small where a large drone wouldn't fit, or we could walk it. But yeah, definitely a good starting drone. It's always good to have it in your arsenal. It's the right tool for the right work. So if we need something small to get into a nook and cranny, then definitely the Air 3 is more than capable of doing it.
Yes, and speaking of using the Air 3 as well as some of the processing. Now, as you know, I'm a software jockey and have been spoiled with very high-end processing software from the start. So I was never familiar with any of the free options when it comes to processing data. And Patrick, for the sake of the video, you did go through some free processing in DJI Terra. In fact, we're going to go ahead and bring out. So as you can see, this is an OBJ output from DJI Terra, but because the way to access the file, there isn't we didn't merge all the OBJ together, so we can only kind of see a chunk of it, and we can bring out a few more individually. But here it is of one of them, and if I were to just bring out the deer in the same section. Patrick, since you have done this particular processing, what are like the big things that you kind of see off the bat?
Well, first of all, I found the Terra to be fairly simple to use, which is good for me. I'm not a data jockey like Sunny is, but I mean, you can see it from the output there. They had the same issues when you're looking at deer with the overhang of the roof, so you couldn't get underneath it there. I didn't do any oblique shots here or processing, but really it's just colorization is different. The color on the left there is definitely more true than what the colors on the right, and that could be just down to me not knowing how to process it like that same way in Terra. I'm sure you can get the same kind of results, but the free version seemed fine, and there's plenty of other versions of software out there to do it. A lot of them have limits on how many photos you can use at a time, but to get started, it's decent. Yes,
so it is perfectly possible to start this area triangulation and some data capturing, which is consumer drones and some free options. Of course, you will face a lot of limitation, both hardware and, in my opinion, a little bit more important. I think Patrick would disagree. Software and, but in that regard, Patrick, I believe we, new season coming into full swing. We are doing a lot of training. We're doing a lot of firsthand training. I believe we have a few sessions coming up.
Yep, definitely.
Yes, and I personally have listened in on some of these training, and what Patrick covered in the second video are one of the foundations, but there are a lot more intricacies in terms of capturing data for enterprise work than just oblique and nadir, but many of which they do require enterprise equipment. But the prerequisite of all is that you have to be a good pilot, such as Patrick. So it's a good start would be to follow what we covered, to have a test, and the only way to get better is to fly more and learn more.
And I think also just being able to process and understand what you're taking photos of and how the end result is going to be, and where there's some issues and where you need to focus on. So it makes you a better pilot when you understand, the data we give to Sunny to process. If he can't fix it in the office, then it's not going to get fixed. It needs to be fixed on site when we're actually capturing the data. And that's what we cover in a lot of these courses, is have the pilots think about the end result. And if you look on the left-hand side there, and you just do a nadir, you'd think, oh, well, I've captured the roof. But when you look on the right-hand side and you see you throw in a real basic oblique flight at 75 degrees, it's improved the model dramatically. Now, if you did another 60-degree and 45-degree flight, again, it would make the model even more. So the courses that we cover there's the the master roof inspection course, which is a short course, 2-hour course for I think $150 there. It gives you a lot of tools to understand how to capture the roof, how do you incorporate the oblique flights there, and even more, like in terms of thinking about the actual output.
Although I have to say, Patrick, I do enjoy the nadir only flight first, just because the fact that your dog has gotten into the reality mesh. I would say that in terms of on that, I'm gonna have to give the point to the nadir only mesh. But yes, that's yes. And so yeah, in terms of this, that's pretty much it for this after action report. Patrick, do you have anything else to add?
No, other than we can direct you to the website there, you see on the bottom there, where it has some courses there for an enterprise with the LiDAR, which we haven't touched on here, and photogrammetry. So there's 2-day courses and a 4-day course, so it's more intense. But for people who are beginning and want to get into roof inspections, we do offer that 2-hour course online or in person in Melbourne here. So by all means, jump on the website and have a look.
Yes, and I think we do have promotions planned in the future as well. So keep a close eye on that. And that's going to be it for today's podcast. And thank you guys for watching and listening. I'm Sunny.
Thanks for joining us.
And yes,
I'm Patrick.
This is Patrick, and we'll see you next time.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Cheers.